Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Sharina Ankhi-Krol of Ankhi-Krol Law. I have with me today one of my favorite clients, Stephanie Heinzler, and she is the owner of New York Doula. And before I go ahead and get into the interview, I just want Stephanie to explain what a doula does, because believe it or not, I didn't know what a doula does until I met her years ago.
Yeah. So the company, the New York Doula and the New York Baby, we take care of pregnant families during labor and birth mostly. And we also spend quite a bit of time with them after the birth. Doulas are generally considered as non-medical support experts who are making sure that the mother has the birth that she wants, that she expects, that she knows at every step what's going to happen. She can lower her intervention rate. Doulas mainly get hired because the parents want to avoid any interventions. They want to avoid a C-section, and they want to make sure that they know at every time during a labor and birth what's going to happen and why. So the doula is the person who explains everything. It's like a tour guide, tour guide for labor and birth. And she really tries to implement the birth preferences that parents have. They usually have a birth plan. We can't really call it plan because we don't know what the baby wants, but it's really preferences. So we know which way the parents typically want to go. Maybe the mother wants to go, and try to make it happen. If it can't work, then it's a little easier to deviate from it because the mother knows why, and to still make the birth a good experience. That is the main part, to leave birth happy and healthy and not traumatized.
That's great. And where are you primarily working out of? Are you in just the New York City area, or?
Yeah, New York City area. We cover a little bit of the surroundings as well. If you like, I'm in Cobble Hill, Brooklyn. I cover Manhattan and Brooklyn. Most doulas do that. A few cover Queens, a couple cover Staten Island, and then a couple cover Jersey City, Hoboken, like just off the George Washington Bridge, Saddle River, or whatnot. So, but the most inquiries do come in from Manhattan and Brooklyn, and that's where we serve most of the time. And I'd say 95% of the time we're in a Manhattan hospital. Here and there, we go to Brooklyn Methodist, for example, but most of the time we're in the city.
Okay, great. So obviously you are smack down in the middle of New York City for the most part, where we are experiencing quite the dilemma with the coronavirus going on. Tell me how you started seeing the effects of the earlier stages of coronavirus in your business.
So actually the effects happened a few days after I got sick. I got sick super early during the pandemic. I got sick March 11th. And I noticed first worries March 13 or 14 with people, clients inquiring about how the services are going to change. Many actually wanted a refund. The doulas had to adjust their services. So it started by us doulas deciding on what we consider as safe at this point. Mid-March, we were still allowed to go into labor and delivery rooms, and we were still allowed to do home visits, but that changed a few days later, right? But we discussed it around March 10, I think, to see what can we do. Is it safe for us to go to a hospital? Is it safe to go to a client's home right now? Because we could be a carrier without knowing. And we did decide that we'll start communicating that we'll do everything, whatever is possible virtually, we'll do virtually. And if someone has already been working with a client, they need to decide together, the doula and the client, if they consider it safe to continue postpartum hours, for example, and what steps both parties implement in order to stay safe, because the doula needs to stay healthy, the parents do. And we did finish a few postpartum jobs in the beginning of all this, when the doula had really only worked with this one client. We had a couple of doulas who were in walking distance from the client and who said, I'll just stop doing groceries now and change things up. And they really worked together, and oftentimes the doulas put in more hours to support their clients to stay safe, the clients stay safe, or they decided they will just always eat together. They will do groceries, and the doula will eat in the client's home so she doesn't have to do her own groceries. So it really became quite flexible, which it worked out really, really nicely. But we still had parents who said, this is not what I expected. I wanted the doula to be with me during labor. As soon as Cuomo signed this order that nobody is allowed in the delivery room except the mother herself, partners were not allowed anymore and doulas weren't allowed. We got a huge flood of inquiries to refund. We didn't really have that set up. We didn't really have something in the contract that specifically named what this is. So it made it a little difficult. At the same time, we had about 3/4 of clients who did decide they want to continue with their doula because the risk of intervention is so much higher right now because the medical team doesn't have time, and thank God some parents understood that and they wanted to keep avoiding interventions and they stayed virtual with the doula, and we've, thank God, really only had good feedback. We've had many doulas who did virtual birth support and all of them had great results. The births went the way the parents wanted, at least most of the time in that direction. Oftentimes in the beginning, the partner was virtual as well. And then I think 2 weeks ago, Cuomo signed a new order that partners are allowed, or one support person. So some parents chose that the one support person should be the doula.
Oh, really?
And that is possible, but it really also depends on how safe is the doula? Has she been self-quarantining? Is she okay going to a hospital? Because some people do have underlying conditions. So some doulas said, I can't, I'm sorry, I just don't feel safe doing that. So of course that created problems because then the clients didn't want the backup. So it's a whole mix of adjustment. In the end, we really try to be as flexible as possible, always looking at client stresses, doula stresses, because for the doulas, the business now went down from, like for us, maybe we get 100 inquiries a month, it went down to 10 a month, right? So you can see how much then ends up with the doula. We haven't had any bookings in the last 2 weeks. So for the doulas, it's horrible. And so we try to put this all into account because I can't ask all the doulas to give all the money back, right, for a service that she literally can't provide and she doesn't have income. And they offer to do everything virtual, even more hours than planned. But I also want to see the client. They didn't expect this to be so different, and they might have their own stressors, lost the job and whatnot. So yeah, we've been able to sort it all out differently with every client. And yeah, so that was a long answer to a short question.
No, that's great. I'm glad you went more into the situation. And in fact, when you came to me and told me about the parents not being allowed to bring in the doulas, that was actually one of the first times I heard about the extent to which they're cramping down on who can be in the delivery room. Like, this is not something people who are not having kids or people who are not in that whole situation of delivering kids like yourself, that they would even think about. But it is a really tough time for expecting mothers who are giving birth, who are having complications even. You can't have anyone in the room, even your partner in some cases. So that's really rough. And so how have you been able to protect yourself after you modified the contracts? Did that help at all for newer clients? Do they understand what's going on? Then it's
I mean, we changed our rates to virtual rates. So we pretty much halved our rates for new clients. And we keep that. We still have those both rates. So we basically have virtual doula rates and in-person doula rates. So that, let's say if a client pays a very low rate right now, which again, nobody has done that. Nobody really said, oh, okay, great, I'll have a virtual doula and I'll upgrade to the in-person support later if it's possible. And so that hasn't been possible. I'm so sorry. I just noticed I need to charge the laptop. So let me get the charger.
Yeah, no.
We've offered a lot of virtual support. Not many have taken us up on it, but we do have inquiries for July, August. I've been booked for the next months, and all my clients are still on the same page with me, and we'll just do in person as much as possible, and virtual is the rest. So I've been lucky with my own clients. And many doulas have been booked for the upcoming months, so that usually stays that way. But August, September, we've got new inquiries, and we literally tell them, we have a lower rate right now that's for virtual support, and it stays virtual if it needs to be, or if everyone feels better that way, or if the clients want the low rate. And if they want to upgrade to in-person support, like birth support, or the doula feels comfortable coming in person, or it's really deemed safe again, then we'll do that. So that way the client has a lot of options, the doula can stay flexible, and we can make a contract. The difficulty right now is we don't really know what we can offer, because we don't know how things will change in delivery rooms, how this will play out, if ever in the next few months, to support people allowed back in the delivery room.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we want to give a lot of flexibility and try to, be as adjustable as possible, but at the same time we do need to commit to something, right, in terms of limit the service, make sure the doula feels like she's honored and her wisdom is honored, and for the client really feel that they get a lot out of the services.
Great. So, the fact that you're able to pivot and, come up with a more flexible offering for your clients, that's great. What would your recommendation be, or your advice be, for other small business owners who are struggling, who can't necessarily think of a way to do business like the way they were before the pandemic?
Yeah. I mean, I think a big part is adjusting services and rates and the website, and really acknowledge the situation. For me, and like for my clients, this is so beyond anything they could have ever imagined. Not only to have the fear of pregnancy, and maybe there's something with the baby, and there's so much going on already nowadays. It's really, I noticed over the years there's much more anxiety surrounding pregnancy, and so this now COVID is on top of that. And it really, I think for many pregnant families, it's something, they can't even grasp, but then they can't make decisions. They can't, like in terms of hiring a doula, which could be amazing and very, very helpful and really lower a lot of stressors. They're not even going there. They're just like, oh gosh, they're just overwhelmed in any directions, and taking in so much other information, that I think it's hard. So for every small business owner, I think it's important to see where can I help, or how can I help. And I noticed a lot of businesses are doing that. I'm getting so many emails with amazing and usually free Zoom calls, and people gathering little conferences online, like a whole afternoon. I think today a real estate broker, she has a 4-hour little conference where she brings in all these different people, like a nutritionist and a psychologist, and does a little bit the idea of self-help, or really self-care. And I thought that was a very, very nice idea. So adjusting, staying in touch with clients, former clients. I checked in with many of my former clients to see how they're doing, and really protecting themselves too. I think to not go overboard with everything that's out there right now is a good thing too. I try to not send 5 emails a week to all my clients. I do like one every 10 days, like a newsletter, because there's so many more emails already. And I think it's important to like really see what do people need, and also take that time. Right now, I heard from a business coach yesterday. She was like, you'll never have the opportunity to step away from your business and look at it and maybe make these adjustments that you always wanted to do, and make them now, and maybe even invest some money, although there's nothing coming in, but it will come in again, right? But really look at it that way, because that can be a nice project too. It can keep people distracted and active and excited, and hopefully it will work in a few months once things have calmed down. Yeah,
absolutely. And I, to piggyback on what you just said, to take this time to really step back and see what you can do with your business. I know we have worked a lot on contracts, the two of us together. Tell me how important it is for small business owners to have contracts that are not taken off the internet, because a lot of people, that's what they're doing now based on, all the things that are going on.
Yeah.
It is now prime time to, well, people are thinking it's prime time to just download, ready-made contracts from the internet. What has your experience been? Because you are a seasoned entrepreneur, you
Yeah.
have a great successful
And
business.
we've
So,
been through a lot, the two of us, so with the contract.
I mean,
Yeah.
have they helped you? And what do you imagine would have happened if you just had, a contract that you downloaded of the internet, that's for free? Because so
Yeah.
many people are doing that right now. And
Yeah. No, it needs to be personalized. I mean, for my business is so weird because we have the contract, but then sometimes the contract is out the window because there's something going on with the mother or with the baby, and it's about more being like human than following the contract. So in my business it's a little bit different. Even now it's like, okay, yeah, we're adjusting, we're doing 20 hours instead of 10, and it's all virtual and whatnot. But I think the key is to really look at all these ifs and buts, which I think we started with a contract 6 years or 7 years ago. Like we've done many contracts,
right.
baby nurses, doulas, my own clients, the other doulas. So we've probably done 10 contracts in total, I think. And they're still being adjusted every 6 months, I want to say, right? I probably contact you every 6
Right. So, that's what I really wanted to focus on
Yeah.
too, is that a contract shouldn't be set in stone.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people realize that, not just in a situation where there's a pandemic or disaster,
Yeah.
but as your business grows, you should always be, updating your contract, like you
Yeah.
said.
Updating it, things change, expectations change, services change, especially nowadays. I did listen to a webinar at the beginning of March. It was a lactation consultation webinar, where a seasoned lactation consultant who also does a lot of legal, I don't know if she does advice really, but yeah, she kind of gives some input. She said, now that we are walking into this pandemic, don't do anything that's out of your scope of practice just because it's the pandemic. Because now, yes, people will thank you, but God forbid something happened, they will come around in a year, and the lawyers have been waiting. So, and that was a very
Ah,
hopeful webinar.
everybody hates lawyers.
So in a way, I was like, whoa, that's kind of sad. But on the other hand, I thought it was a great webinar because right now in my profession and many small business, we are all about, we want to do everything to help whoever we usually help and give services to. We want to do it all. And we are very willing to go above and beyond and maybe do something that's not our scope of practice, whatever it might be, right? Like I got inquiries for home births. People actually every day in March, I got phone calls until I changed it on my website and my answering machine. Like I updated and I said, okay, we are doulas. We do not do home births without a home birth midwife. We cannot do that. But until then, because everyone wants home births now, right? I think people would have just happily hired us and just, oh, the doula, she seems confident. It's going to be fine, And I think it is important nowadays to look over the contracts again and adjust it to maybe even this situation, and really, yeah, make it personal for whatever services people do, and really think of every little bit. And even for me now, after 8 years with those contracts and my agency, there are still things I haven't thought about that maybe a client asks, and I'm like, oh gosh, geez, I never thought about that, And okay, we might as well add that into the contract, or we don't. And oftentimes, of course, the contract has protected us because there was something in there that said, um, the baby's being born within an hour. There's not going to be a refund because it's nobody's fault, right? Like within an hour of contractions or whatever. So things that protect the small business, but a big part is also, if you have a good and personalized contract, you will come across as very professional and as someone who knows what they're doing, and also someone who thinks about protecting the client. And that was always a big part for me as well, to have a lot of things in there that give the client the feeling of, hey, she's watching out. She looked like this could oh gosh, I didn't even think that this could happen. Oh, thank God I'm protected here, right? Like I call my doula, she's not picking up ever. I get 100% refund, things like that, right? So I think that is important, and the client will see that. I really think a good contract is an amazing asset to the client, because they really know that you're a good business person and a good service provider. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes I get questions like, "Oh, what if I scare away my clients or my customer because I'm giving such an extensive contract?" You
Yeah.
wouldn't believe how many times I've heard that. So my response to that is always, if they don't want to sign a contract, that's probably the biggest red flag you're going to get,
Right.
because there's nothing protecting either side, and it's probably better to let that person go.
Yeah. And we've been there, but really not often, which is why, I think that's fine. Maybe we filter out 5% of clients who want to sign, and we sometimes we make adjustments if it's okay with the doula, and it's safe, but there's certain clauses you can't take out and shouldn't take out. And I think, yeah, that's a good thing to keep in mind, to
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
communicate with the client.
No, I
And let
absolutely
them
agree.
go if it doesn't work out.
Yes, I want to go back to something you mentioned, and something that I was really interested in showcasing in today's interview is that, you got sick with COVID-19, and I, am learning more and more about people that are near and dear to my heart that are being infected, in various ways, and the symptoms vary greatly from person to person. Do you mind talking to us about how you realized that you might have the coronavirus?
Yeah. So beginning of March, I already actually stopped taking the subway. I only took cabs. I did home visits. I didn't have a birth during that time. So I saw a few clients here and there, but only for like an hour or so for lactation consultations. So I feel I started early with taking my precautions. So on March 11, I think March 10, I had a little bit of a sore throat. And March 11, I couldn't fall asleep. I felt very off, very strange. And so I took my temperature, and it was 101.7. And it actually stayed there for 2 days. That's how I thought, whoa, okay, now I have a fever. That's scary. So I figured maybe I caught it. The next day, I started having a dry cough. It was never bad. That was a Wednesday with the dry cough, Wednesday, Thursday. And I thought I might have healed faster, but it was quite stressful to see what can I do. Is this COVID? How can I find out if it's COVID? I work with moms and babies. I kind of need to know what I have. Obviously, I didn't go anywhere. So Thursday, I called all kinds of doctors that I knew. I did one online video with the doctor who said, yeah, it's probably COVID. Nobody wanted to see me. Friday, I called CDMD on the 13th, and they said, well, we don't do testing. I was like, okay. And then my partner had the idea to maybe go into CDMD to check on the flu to see if that's positive or negative, because then we could rule that out, and probably then it's COVID. So I called CDMD again and said, could we do the flu test? And they said, sure, come in. So okay, I went to CDMD with my mask, and the flu test was negative. And because I had this 101.7 fever, they were like, okay, we'll do the COVID test. I was like, great, So that was good that I was able to get tested. It took 8 days for the result. My fever went down. It kind of spiked in the evening a little bit. I never got horribly sick to a point that I thought about going to the hospital. But I spoke with 3 doctors during these 2 weeks that I had this dry cough and this weird fever up down phase. I had diarrhea as well. Like, they were all lots of little things. It wasn't horrible though. I think if I would have known it's the flu, I would have just been like, it's fine. But because especially one of my doctors was very panicky, I got panicky. So that I really believe the mindset with this is so much bigger than the actual illness. For those who don't have it terribly, of course, I also know people who had to go to the hospital, and for some it plays out really not, of course, horribly. But for many, it doesn't even show as many symptoms. And in Germany, I don't know if you heard, but they did this testing of this little town, and they noticed that 14% were positive, but only 3% were actually showing symptoms. So that's why here, of course, big talk about testing the antibodies for at some point everybody, right? But yeah, so I want to say the symptoms move quite a bit, which I heard from many was the same. I lost my sense of taste and smell. I had this diarrhea. I had a tightness in my chest, and a cough, but the cough never let me not sleep, for example. Like it wasn't, sometimes you have a cough and you cough all night, right? But it wasn't like that. I was able to sleep. So I want to say it's a weird thing. It was just awkward. Different than any other virus that I've had before, any other cold. My nose was congested for 2 weeks, I think, but nothing really ever, like it never really resolved. It just suddenly went away. And I think 10 days ago, my symptoms were pretty much gone. I was able, through a friend and this friend and that friend, like through several resources, I was able to find a doctor who said he'll take me in to test me again on COVID, because I said I work with mommies and babies and I want to know if I'm safe to go back. I haven't seen anyone in person yet. I do want to play it safe until I have my antibody test. But at least if someone went in labor super early, I can go because I know I'm negative now, right? So yeah, this doctor tested me. I got the result 24 hours later and then I was negative. So that was a big,
That's great. Congrats on
happy
getting out
day.
of it and staying strong.
Huh?
I said congrats on getting out of this mess and,
Yeah.
staying strong and staying
I think
positive.
a big part was really, we had to constantly discuss and stay in touch with people. Could I talk to this doctor? What's normal? Where can I get tested again? It was not one of those situations where you're like, oh, I have this cold or flu, I'll just lie in bed for a week, right? There's so much information out there. So I really believe that's what makes it worse in a way.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
and
just want to tap into something you mentioned before we started recording, which I think is really important right now. You said, social media, and you just had to like get off of it because of the panic and all the madness that's happening. You want to elaborate a little bit on that, because I think everyone is just bombarded with all this
yeah,
information.
I really think choose your social media or choose wherever you get your news from. We really limited. My partner got sick too, so we didn't even watch the news for 2 weeks. I knew what we have. We knew what to do. Our neighbors brought everything what we needed. We didn't have to leave the house. And to hear anything negative, why would that help, right? So I knew whatever is super important, I'll hear from my family. They knew what was going on in New York, so they sometimes brought some positive news, if there were any in March, right? There weren't as many yet. And it really helped to do a lot of positive thinking, radical acceptance podcasts. I'm a fan of Eckhart Tolle. That helped me tremendously to really dive into what does this mean for me if you're sick, for example, right? Like really go through that in your way, whatever works for you. For me, it was more the maybe spiritual, philosophical way, but also calming myself down. And now, of course, I watch much more news, but I really choose, like I watch Cuomo maybe once a day. And I'm pretty much all set with that, right? Like I don't need to listen to a lot of other things unless I want to. And whenever I go online, there's stuff in my face anyway. So I don't need to choose to also watch the news when there's things that I don't even plan to see in my face immediately. And I think that is a very, very big part. I noticed that with quite a few pregnant clients, and thank God many listen to me with my own clients, and they really choose what they watch and what they listen to, or they might just read the news and don't watch TV anymore, because it's always been much more dramatic in this country, all kinds of news, compared to my home country in Germany. In Germany, they read the news with a straight face, whatever it is, straight face, that's it. And here, we just need a little thunderstorm and it's like breaking news and like dramatic voice, and everything's always ramped up, which is amazing in general in this country. But with the news, it's like they couldn't ramp it up more because it was already ramped up. And I think it's important to see what works for you. If you're stressed, if you're someone who can take in all the news on TV, great, right? But for me, print works.
Yeah. Yeah. So the mental health aspect right now is really important. You need to keep your sanity, just distance yourself if you can from it.
Yeah.
So, thank you for that tidbit. That's really helpful.
Find
Any
a good
parting,
routine at home. That's important too. Get a routine.
yeah. Do you have any parting words of wisdom for other small business owners during this time of crisis?
It's going to pass. I think that's a big part. I mean, it is going to pass. This is a phase. It is something very new to all of us that can be a chance. I really try to communicate that and take that time that we now have. We might have less time depending on the job, but we might have more time to really see what can I do with this new time and fill it with something meaningful, whether it's focused on the business, which I think it really should be in parts. But for me, another big part is also volunteering wherever I can, right? Helping, filling out all these little questionnaires that come in from churches and whatnot, where you might, really can actively help. And I think that will get you through this time and make you feel fulfilled and distracted and gain strength and stay strong, in order to be prepared for whatever is about to come, which might be a big shift in your business in the fall. Who knows? Good or
And it
bad?
could
I
be
don't
it
know.
could be for the better. So,
Exactly.
we just
Good or
have
bad?
to be
Exactly.
patient. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, and I'm so glad you're back and you look great. And
Thank you.
we'll be in touch.
Yeah.
Hopefully all of this will pass and we can meet up and have
Exactly.
coffee.
Yes.
All
Yeah.
right, thank you.
Oh, be well.